time to do that. You know, having children is a very difficult. It's a difficult decision because you're accustomed, especially if you're in business. You know, you're accustomed to all that pro and con kind of analytical stuff, and when you do that with children, the con side is always more heavily weighted than the pro side. But the truth is, the whole pro side is just having children. And you know, the truth is that for me, anyway, and for Charlotte, that has been the most important, fulfilling, and rewarding part of our lives ever. You know, I heard one time someone saying that, let's see, that they had been at many deathbeds, a doctor, and that they had never once heard anyone say, gosh, if I'd only spent more time at the office. That's not a regret that people have. So the reward, the fun part, the thing that makes life more fulfilling is having a family, having children. And sure, it's a crapshoot. I mean, it really is. There are all kinds of things can go wrong. I mean, and more things will go wrong than will go right. But it's a decision I'm glad that we made.
So what kind of change did that mean for you in your life? Did you feel like you had to step into a new role and in a way become a new person to step into that role? Or how did you feel during that time when you now had a child who was dependent on you?
Yeah, I think everyone feels that. Yeah, I do. I think everyone feels that. I guess technically, according to the IRS, your wife is your dependent. But the reality is she's not. I mean, she's got a college degree. She can support herself. She can do, a child can. And so once you do that, you literally have a dependent. You literally have a little life that is dependent on you, and you've got to step up to it, and you've got to do the best you can. I think that's what everyone does. They do the best they can. Some people are, just luckier and able to do more. And some people can't do everything that they probably should be doing.
And so how did you decide how to parent Jenny and Sarah?
Honestly, it's day to day. It's day to day. And you're going to make, certainly we did a lot of mistakes and a lot of errors. I think that's part of the advantage of having two parents. You have someone to bounce it off of. How should we handle this? What should we do? And then, when you totally punt, you're like, I'm going to tell your father and he's going to, it's like, I can't handle this. I'm going to tell your father and he's going to, whatever. Or I'm going to tell your mother and, she's going to have to deal with you. But it is, it's day by day. And the thing is that it is, as everybody knows this, it's an evolving game. When you get good at something in business, surgery or, whatever, you do a thing, you do it more, you do it until you get it right, and then you get perfect at it. And parenting isn't like that. because you do it and you get it right. And I'm like, oh man, I can deal with a 6-year-old, and then suddenly they're 8, and suddenly none of that stuff works, and then they're 18, and then none of that stuff works. So every time you get good at something, you perfect changing diapers, they don't need diapers anymore. It's like crap. I just got good at that. But that's true throughout their lives, and of course, you're always a parent too. So, when you're in your 70s, you still have kids, and you're still parenting, and they're still, asking for stuff and wanting advice and whatever. That's nice. It's a good thing.
Yeah. All right, we're closing in 7. So what have Jenny and Sarah meant to you as a father and as a person?
Well, they've changed my life. They've made my life, really. That's, I wouldn't be, let me say this. Life is an evolution. You shouldn't be the same person next year that you were last year. If you are, that's a real disappointment. You should be evolving, not just from, crawling to walking or walking to running or through middle school or through college. All of those are evolutions. All of those are changes. But you should be evolving and changing throughout your whole life. And if you're not hitting those stubs and moving forward in your personal evolution, then you're just living day to day. If you have to look at your watch and figure out, is this 2018 or 2025? You haven't been doing your job. And kids help you do that, because they are evolving, they are changing, and they force this evolution in you. They force you to evolve and to move into another stage and another, they say in recruiting that there's a difference between a guy who has 20 years of experience and a guy who has 1 year of experience 20 times. There are guys who will represent themselves as having 20 years of experience, and you talk to them, you read their resume, and you realize you don't have 20 years of experience. You have 1 year of experience 20 times. And there are a lot of people who live their lives like that, just 1 year of experience 20 times. Or 60 times, or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you have 20 years of experience, you've evolved and you've changed and you've had succeeding levels of responsibility, and every time you do, there's a new world, and you're learning new and different things, and it's not like you're casting off the things that you learned earlier. It's just that you're building that. You're making yourself bigger and rounder and more fully packed, and that is having that experience is valuable to you as a person. And kids force you to do that. They force you to do that. And I think partially a marriage forces you to do that. But, there are some certain things in your life that help you along to not be satisfied with having your 1 year of experience 20 times.
Yeah. So how did you handle, you went from JI Case, eventually went to Arby's, correct?
Yeah, we were in Singapore, and they started in the 80s. It was a bad time. Early 80s was a bad time. Jimmy Carter was president. Inflation was rampant. Business was terrible, and the company was downsizing Asian operations, and we were transferred back to the U.S., and Charlotte was pregnant at the time with Sarah. So we transferred to the U.S., and within months, I was laid off. They used to call it layoffs. Now they call it RIF, I think. But anyway, I was laid off. So I didn't have a job. I had a 2-year-old and a brand new baby, and no job. And in fact, no furniture, because all our furniture was in a shipping container coming over from Southeast Asia. So we decided at that point we didn't want to stay in Racine, Wisconsin. It offered nothing. It was a small town, and it was cold. And so we decided on a city where we wanted to live. And we thought about lots of different places. It had to be big enough that I could get a job in international business. Had to have a big airport. We decided that it needed to be warm. We had just come from the tropics, and we did not want cold. We spent 2.5 frigid years in Racine, and we didn't want to replicate that experience. So we marked off California, too nutty. We marked off New York and Chicago, too cold. It really left Miami, Atlanta, Dallas, and Houston. Those are really the areas that we went to. I went to Miami to look around, and at that time in the early 80s, Miami wasn't a good place. It was not a place to raise a family. They had all kinds of drug problems. It was dangerous. It wasn't a great place. Houston, it was just too hot and humid and miserable and chaotic. There wasn't enough of anything, Dallas, I really liked. And we're talking 82. We came back to the States in early 82, so this would have been the summer of 82. It was great. In Dallas, we almost moved to, and I told Charlotte all about it. It was fantastic. And then I went to Atlanta, and and I told her it's like Dallas with trees. It's great. We had thought about Nashville. Nashville didn't even have an airport. Or they had an airport. It wasn't an international airport. You could go anywhere. And so it was Atlanta. We moved to Atlanta. Didn't have a job. We got a cheap apartment and some rented furniture, and I started looking for a job. And it was not easy. I still have a big portfolio of rejection letters. We sent out all kinds of letters. But like I said, it was a hard time. Early 80s was a hard time. And no one was hiring. And believe it or not, I think my first, when we bought our house, I think the interest rate was like 18%, something. It was ridiculous. And but of course we bought it with just in the faith that at some point the interest rate were going to fall and we'd be able to refinance it, which we did. But it was ridiculously high. So I wound up, the only person I've ever known actually who actually got a job through the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal has those display ads, at least they did at the time. And Arby's was looking for an international franchise manager. And so I didn't even, it was interesting now I'm thinking about it. I didn't send in a resume because Arby's was located in Atlanta. And I was in Atlanta. And so I got my resume and I called Arby's and I said, yeah, I'm interested in in buying a franchise internationally. And she said, all right, well, let me put you in, let me transfer you to Mr. Johnson. And I said, Mr. Johnson? She said, yes, Mr. Russ Johnson. He's the vice president of franchising. And I said, thank you, and hung up. And then I went down to Arby's with my resume. And when I got to the reception area, I said, I'd like to speak with Mr. Russ Johnson. And she said, do you have an appointment? I said, no, I don't, but I need to speak with him. And he came out. And I handed him my resume and I said, just wanted to meet you, Mr. Johnson. I'm Jack Harris. Have a lot of experience internationally. Just gotten into the U.S. from Singapore. And he asked me about what I knew about fast food, and I said, absolutely nothing. But I will teach you about international if you'll teach me about fast food. And I got the job. So he didn't have to sort through a million resumes, sent in people who responded to the Wall Street Journal ad, and I got a job with Arby's. And they had a kind of a chaotic, that they were just responding to international inquiries, and they had like a store in Kuwait and a store somewhere that couldn't supply them, and it was just, so I shut down all that and concentrated on Canada, because Canada was close and we could supply them, and it was an international expansion, and so that's, the rest is history. I did the international, then I was the international franchise manager, and then I became the vice president of franchising, and then I became the vice president of development at Arby's. And then Arby's was acquired. Arby's was a division of Royal Crown Companies, and Royal Crown was acquired by another company. And they eventually relocated to Miami, actually. And I didn't go. Nobody else really went on the Miami move. And so I was looking for something else to do at that point. But I had been with Arby's for maybe another 7 or 8 years at that point. I've been with them for a while.
So what year is this now, roughly?
It would have been roughly 1990, something like that. So at that point, I started looking for another job, and I found a job at Meineke, which was a muffler company. And they hired me as their vice president of franchising at Meineke, and they were based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and on Tryon Street, as I recall. And I started working as their VP of, they had given me the understanding that I could remain in Atlanta and still do this job, and ultimately they decided that no, I needed to move to Charlotte, and we had pretty deep roots by that time in Atlanta. So I didn't do that, and I started looking for something else to do in Atlanta. And ultimately I decided to, I had the money required to do it, and I decided to buy a company. And I was doing franchise consulting for a company called PCS, Professional Carpet Services. they dyed carpets and so forth, mainly for the apartment industry. And they had a division called Atlanta Commercial Carpets that did carpet replacements, and I bought that company. And so I did that, owned Atlanta Commercial Carpets for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, something like that. And I did not particularly like doing the carpet business. That just wasn't it. And it wasn't that profitable, and it was a difficult slog. I mean, it was a real blue-collar slog, replacing carpets. And but what happened was, when you're the president of a small company, you know a lot of other presidents of other small companies, and we were all kind of in the same boat. We needed to, at that point, networking was a big deal. Networking your computer. We had the receptionist had a computer, ordering had a computer. We had an accounting computer. We had an inventory control in the back. We had several different computers, and none of them talked to one another. That was before the days of networking. And so I learned how to do it. I learned how to network the computers. I learned how to, just reading about it. And then I started doing that for other small companies that also needed that same. Accounting companies, travel agencies, small companies. And found that to be interesting and rewarding. And I was making more money doing that than in the carpet business. So ultimately I sold the carpet business and had Withmere Group, which was the consulting group, networking. And that got me involved in another one of those crapshoot. I mean, it just happened, and didn't plan it. But in order to make the next step, I really had to get some education. I really had to do something more sophisticated than just reading about it. And doing that was going to cost money. I mean, it was going to cost like $5,000, as I recall, to get. And that was a lot of money at the time, and I didn't want to spend it, I had a couple of kids and a wife, and I didn't know how long I was going to be unemployed after I'd sold the car. So actually, my dad said, you really need to do that, to make that next step. You need to do that. And he said, I'll pay for it. You go to school, and I'll pay for it. And that was a really great thing for him to step up to do. Something as a husband and father and so forth, I was reluctant to do, but he said, if you'll go to school, I'll pay for it. So I did, and then I got involved in the technology side, and then I did consulting and did technology consulting. I worked for Sprint, their Paranet division. I actually worked for Vanguard before that, then I worked for Sprint and their Paranet division, and then became kind of a specialist in business continuity and business continuity planning, disaster recovery, and business continuity. And that's when I started specifically doing project work for big companies, Georgia Power, a lot of other companies. And then I got a job with Mirant, which was an energy trading company. I did their business continuity. And then I got a job ultimately with SunTrust, and did business continuity at SunTrust for about 5 years, and that kind of takes me toward the end of my career. And I thought when I left SunTrust that I was retired, but then SunTrust outsourced their back office, and the back office is the stuff that does things like check sorting and the stuff that happens behind the scenes. That was a company named SimCorp, and it was a Canadian company, and it was named SimCorp, and they did all the back office stuff for SunTrust. So SimCorp called me and said, "You used to work for SunTrust, and we need a business continuity guy. Would you be interested?" And I said, "How much would you pay?" And they told me, and I said, "I'm interested." So I worked for them for a couple of years, and then ultimately SimCorp retreated back to Canada. They sold the business to Xerox. So Xerox did the back office for SunTrust. At that point, I retired.
That's awesome. So looking back over your career, what advice would you give yourself if you could give yourself advice when you were starting out your career?
You know, I think that the advice that I would give myself is don't plan too much. I know that sounds like a contrary kind of thing to say, but sometimes when you plan too much, something comes up, some opportunity comes up, something comes up, and you go, "Yeah, I'm not going to. That's not in the plan. You know, that's not in the plan." And so you wind up saying no to something that might have been good. You know, when I was in graduate school, my focus was on marketing, Spanish language, and Latin American studies. And when I was in international advertising, I had this opportunity, this offer to make a lateral move into Asian operations. Well, obviously with Spanish language and Latin American, that didn't make much sense. And if I'd been too focused on, no, I've got this plan, and then I would have never taken advantage of that. But I did, and it was not planned. But that's what happened, and and it turned out to be great. It turned out to be wonderful. So I think there are a lot of things. I guess the lesson is you have to remain more flexible than you think, because I think it was Eisenhower who said that you need to go into battle with a plan, because otherwise you need to have something that you can change. You need to go back into battle with a plan because you need something that you can change. And that's the way it is with a plan. You need to have something that you can change. And so you can have your plan, you can have your your goals and your ambitions and so forth, but you have to keep in mind this is flexible. I mean, we're going to have to change this, and so I think I would tell myself that, because I had a lot of anxiety about a lot of the things that I did, and but you need to, sometimes you just need to chill and just say, it's okay, it's going to be all right, and don't worry about the plan.
Interesting. And so what about family life during this time? So you have your work life. How was family life going? How was raising kids? How was your marriage? How was all that?
For the most part, Charlotte was a housewife. I know a lot of that doesn't apply these days. I know that women work outside the home, and both parents parent frequently. But for the most part, certainly when I was a kid, my dad did the work and my mom did the parenting. My dad wasn't that involved in parenting until he was older, and really after retirement, he was involved more in our lives than he was before. I was more involved in my kid's life than he was. But for the most part, I was responsible for taking care of the money and the work and that kind of stuff. And Charlotte handled diaper changing, feeding the kids, getting them to whatever kind of practice it was. I guess, does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I didn't know if there was anything else.
There's the truth is, I can't offer advice in that regard because I know that all of this has changed these days. And,
yeah. So am I hearing right that you feel like you're pretty career focused during that part of your career?
Of the life? Yeah, absolutely. And it was a different time. I mean, at that time you went to work. I mean, Scott works in the basement. That's what he does. But you got dressed. Every day was a suit and tie. I mean, when I was working at Arby's in the corporate office, every day was a suit and tie. Every day, I mean, sometimes we had rose bushes in the front yard, and sometimes Jenny would go out with Charlotte and cut a rose for my lapel, I mean, that was, it was a very formal, you left and then you came back. And when you came back in the evening, there was no email, there was nothing else. I mean, you were home until the next day. And so that was, occasionally you could bring something home, to work on a letter, or, work on something. But for the most part, that's the way it was. There was this divide between, your work life and your home life. And so throughout the day, you were unavailable to do anything. I mean, kids needed something, Charlotte had to handle that.
Yeah. All right, I think that's a good...
I enjoyed it. I mean, I thought it was terrific, and I thought I got a lot done working from home. But that was really only my last job that I really worked from home most of the time. I mean, like 90% of the time. We had an office. I had an office. I could go in, but most of what I did wasn't with other people in the office. It was with all of the processing facilities, and they were in different states all over. So I could work from home just as easily. Like that. What do you think, Russ? Are you getting what you want?
Yes. We've still got a lot to go, so I don't know how much energy you got. We can always continue another time, but I've got plenty I keep wanting to dig in on. So
really, okay.
But yeah, just to finish,
chronologically.
Yes, I was trying to say chronicling your life. What's it been like in retirement? What's retirement life been like for you? What have been your biggest interests and hobbies, and what have you found joy in?
Yeah. Are you recording?
I am, yeah. I wanted to hear your response to James. I'll edit this out, but I wanted to hear your response to James's work from home questions.
Yeah. Retirement is... retirement's a double-edged sword. It really is. And I think some people do it well, and I think some people do it poorly. I guess it's kind of like work from home. It really is. When you're working, there's a structured environment. You have to follow the structure. You have a title. You have a job. You have results. And there are some people that need that. They need to come into the office. They need a title. They need something on their door. They need to know that, you know, in the morning I do this, in the afternoon I do that. And those people usually don't do very well in retirement. And I've known some like that. I've known some people that unretired. In fact, I have a friend who, I mean, he's my age, and he is still working every day as an attorney because he needs that. You know, he needs that. And I can understand that. He's a really smart guy, but he needs that. I think, you know, I'm just different. Like a lot of retirees, I'm delighted not to work. I'm absolutely delighted. And that regimen is restrictive for me. And I like to have a much freer regimen. And maybe that's like work from home. You know, I've still got stuff I want to get done, but I don't like to be restricted. And so for me, it's much, you know, retirement has allowed me the freedom to do what I want to do. Now there are caveats in that. And, you know, the first and probably the most important is that you have to be financially prepared to do it. If you're not financially prepared to do it, then you don't have that universal choice. You know, you don't have that universal choice. You have to do what you have to do. But if you've financially prepared yourself for retirement and you have the wherewithal to do what you want to do, then coupled with the creativity to decide what you want to do, then, you know, life is a bowl of cherries. I mean, you know, that's a really good thing. But, you know, but it's dangerous. I mean, you know, it's like work from home. You know, it's dangerous. You know, you can just goof off and do nothing and get nothing done and, you know, get fired. So that's the, you know, that's the downside. So I think some people handle it, and that's a little bit of, you need a little bit of introspection. You know, you need a little bit of, you have to think about how you would handle it. And did I have a plan going into retirement? No. I mean, my plan was not to work and do something that I enjoyed. You know, that was it. That was all the plan. So that was, I guess, a non-plan. But I have enjoyed being able to take a direction and correct, and take a direction and correct. And, you know, that's been fun. The one, you know, the one sort of guiding, it's a guiding principle, but the one thing that has been an anchor has been the kids and the grandkids. And I don't know if they just are faking it or if they really do enjoy the input. But they seem to enjoy the input. You know, they seem to like to ask me about, I mean, even the kids, not just the grandkids. You know, what do you think, Grandpa, if I did this or did, you know? And frequently I have input. And it may be valuable, it may not, but I frequently have input, and I frequently, you know, tell them what I think or help them with something, or, you know, take Charlie to swim team practice and pick her up, and, you know, or stay there at swim team practice and give her a few pointers on something she needs to be doing or thinking about or whatever. You know, so You know, that's kind of a baseline thing, but you can't spend all your time doing that. So you have to have other things that you're interested in, and luckily for me, I have other things that I'm interested in. So, and I will do a ridiculous amount of stupid research on something that, you know, for one reason or another hits my fancy, and you know, I'm like, why do they put spruce on the back of violins? Why is it spruce instead of oak? You know, turns out there are very good reasons for that. But fortunately, the internet's around. There are things around, and you can, you know, actually almost speak to a luthier about that. You know, about designing violins, and you know how they, and you can watch them work, and you know. So I was like, oh.
So what have been the most meaningful projects to you in retirement, or just the most meaningful things you've done in retirement?
Well, I mean, to be brutally honest, nothing has been meaningful. You know, it's just been fun. You know, I'm not changing the world, and I'm not, you know, making this grand contribution other than in the things that I do with the grandkids and my kids. But most of those other things that I do are just fun. I mean, I've just enjoyed doing them, and they're not really meaningful. They're not changing the world. And I think people overemphasize that. You know, you want to have meaning in life. Everything has to be meaningful. No, it doesn't. It can just be fun. You know, I mean, what's the meaning of donuts? You know, there's no meaning. It's just fun. You know, let's have donuts. So I think there's a lot. You know, you underestimate that value of things that are meaninglessly fun, and you have to do, in a working life, you have to do things you have to do, and you don't have an opportunity to do much that's just meaninglessly fun. But when you're retired, you can do that. And so I really like that. I like that opportunity. I cherish the time that I have to do something that is just meaninglessly fun. And I, you know, for example, I can give you a lot of examples, but you know, one you've probably heard of that I've done that I have enjoyed restoring Weber grills. I've done like, I don't know, 12 or 15 of them. My only problem is what to do with them after I've done, you know, so I give them away, and you know, I had the last one I think I had for like a year before I could find somebody to give it to. Needed a grill. But it's just, you know, I've done all the research, I know how to disassemble them, I know the parts that are welded, the parts that are screwed, which kind of, you know, which gauge of steel they use, and you know, I can disassemble one of these things and reassemble it and do it right. Certain chemicals you use to clean them, and certain chemicals you want to avoid, and you know, how do you lubricate the valves, and all this kind of stuff. I know more about Weber grills than Weber knows, and especially the older ones. But it's just fun. What's the meaning in that? Nothing. There is no meaning in that. It's just fun. And so I've taken on a lot of projects that are like that, that are fulfilling to me and not to anyone else. And to have the luxury of being able to do that is phenomenal. I mean, that's a phenomenal thing. And if you think about humanity, and the course of humanity over millennia. I mean, how many of us, human beings, Homo sapiens, have had the opportunity to do that? I mean, without a struggle every day to find enough to eat that day, or to, and just to pray to somebody and be grateful for having made it through the day. I think that's an exceptional thing. And that's why I think, because it is so exceptional, that's why I think so many people are bad at it. I think there are just a lot of people who are bad at retirement because they're just not, we're not really wired to be able to do that. We're just not. And, culture, a lot of cultures are designed, these multi-generational cultures. A good example is the Chinese or the Japanese, where people in the prime of their lives frequently have children, and yet they have to work. And so you have this third generation, you have the grandparents or the great-grandparents that care for the children while the adults go out and plant the paddies. And you need that. But if you need that, then what that means is those grandparents, they're working. Raising a child is work. It's a lot of work. So they're working throughout their lives until they die. And then they're replaced by the next generation whose children are now having children and they're taking care of. So maybe that brings meaning to their life, it certainly does to me, to be able to help, as a grandparent. But for me to be able to have time and money and be able to do whatever I want to do, that's rare. I mean, in the human history, that's rare. There's a toast, a Spanish toast, that says, "Salud, dinero, y amor sin suegras." That's health, money, and love without mothers-in-law. And so, when you have that, health, money, and love without mothers-in-law, that's a sweet time, in life. And actually, the original is "Salud, dinero, y tiempo para gustarnos," which is health, money, and the time to enjoy them.
That's awesome. So now that you're perched up on your platform in retirement and you can look back in your life so far, what's been the most fun, most enjoyable time of your life? Was it when you were in high school? Was it when you were in college? Is it now in retirement? What's been the best moments of your life?
Well, I think that is, it's easier to talk about the worst moments in your life than the best moments in your life, because the truth is, it's kind of like, if you were to say, what was your best car? Well, this car was really great for, going mudding and doing these things, and, that was great for that. This car was great, it was great for carrying the kids. This car was wonderful. It was fast and sporty, and, there were great times all along, but they were great for different reasons all along. So would I want to, I mean, I loved, I loved college. It was just fantastic for me. It was a wonderful free time and a big change in my life. But, was it one of the best times of my life? No, I mean, it was fun, but would I want to do that again? Not really. I mean, it's, and having a baby, that was a great time in life. It was a wonderful time having a child and all that. But it was a great time for then, for when I was in that circumstance and in that age and had that health and I think honestly, I just went in retrospect, I just went from strength to strength. I mean, it was a great time and enjoyed it all. And now it's a great time. I mean, couldn't be better than this. I mean, this is wonderful. But I'm lucky, and I'm constantly reminded, my dad used to talk about the luck of the Harrises. And he said, my mom was worried about something or another. And he said, don't worry about that. It's going to be fine. And she said, why? Why? He said, because we're lucky. We'll always be lucky. And that gave her some feeling of confidence. And I think it's true, We've always been lucky. I think we'll always be lucky. I'm amazed that Charlotte and I have been so fortunate. We really have been. We're older now, and we're in good health, and we got plenty of money, and everything's been fine. I know we're just that one bad diagnosis away from, everything changing. But we've been lucky.
So you talked earlier about meaningless fun and the role that plays. But on the other side of the coin, what's been really meaningful to you? Who have been the most meaningful people in your life, and what have been the most meaningful things in your life?
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about that the most meaningful people in my life have been my children. And, my wife, my children, my grandchildren. I mean, that's, if you're looking for meaningful things, that's certainly, that's it. I mean, you also, through your children, you live vicariously. There is this thing, they're doing things, and you relate to those things, relate to them. And so, same thing with your grandchildren. You're sort of living. They're reminders to you of, oh yeah, I remember that time in life and that decision and that difficult thing, or that wonderful thing. So certainly, those would be the meaningful things. Like I said earlier, nobody ever on their deathbed says, I just spent a little more time in the office. There's very little that you, I now have the opportunity to re-examine it, and all those things that I did that I thought were so important, this project or this thing, it's all gone now. I mean, none of it is important. I mean, what was important in 1989 when I did it, and I was sweating bullets about it, and losing sleep over it, and oh, did we get that deal, and what? Nobody remembers it. Nobody cares. So but the one thing that will succeed you will be, I mean, hopefully so anyway, will be your kids and your grandkids and their kids and generations you'll never meet. But yeah, that's definitely so.
So, sticking on meaning, do you think there's a meaning to life? And if so, what is it?
Oh, well, that's, you know, I've always felt this, you know, you can't ever say meaning or meaningful without following it with to whom? Is there a meaning in to whom? Who are you talking about that will find this meaningful? What are you talking about? Are you talking about to you? Is there a meaning in life to you? Or do you mean to some man in the sky or other people? You know, what do you mean meaningful? What is the meaning of life? I find that a really I know that's a common question. I know people ask that question, you know, what is the meaning of life? Well, who are you talking about, too? You know? And suddenly, if you really think about it, the whole thing kind of crumbles. You know, it's just like, well, meaningful to society. Well, I don't think society cares a damn thing about my life. So what are you talking about? I think we all create our own individual meanings, and what's maybe meaningful to me in my life is different from what's meaningful to you in yours. But you know, to try to construct some, you know, oh, this is the thing that's, you know, giving to others is meaning. Who's that meaningful to? I guess it's meaningful to the others that get whatever you give, but I think it's it's a question that's often asked, and I think it's not a meaningful question.
Fair enough. So do you have any regrets in life? Do you have anything you could change if you were able to go in a time machine and go back to a certain time period? Is there anything that you would change or any regrets that you have in life?
Well, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say none. And the reason is that I think that's, unfortunately, I think some people are ruled by that. They're ruled by their regrets. And I think that's really bad. You know, my mom used to say, just remember, you can never go back, but you can always go on. And I think that's, I think that's right in life. I think it's not that some people focus too much on their regrets. I think it's that they think of them at all. I think that's a mistake. You know, you get what you get, you know, these little things that, like I say, life turns on a dime. If Charlotte and I hadn't run into each other on a Halloween night, none of this would be here. You know, if I had run into Jerry Connor, you know, as we crossed the campus, I don't know what my reality would have been. I think it would have been fine. I think my life, I would have been a completely different thing, and I think it would have been fine. I think it would have been just fine. And so to regret, oh, I worked for this company, but what? It's fine. I mean, you know, you just move on and you create a life with the stuff you have available to you. And I really do think, you know, in terms of regrets, I think that's a waste of time. I really do. And unfortunately, unfortunately for them, I think some people spend their lives doing that. You know, I have a daughter, Jenny, who's twice divorced now. And, you know, she might say, oh, I regret, you know, marrying Mike. But, you know, her whole life took a turn as a result of marrying Mike. She has a child. She has you know, the reality of her life is a certain, yeah, okay, you got a divorce, but that is a forward thing. That's not, you know, you can't just erase that. Your whole life took a course as a result of that. And, you know, sure, you have things that you know, are sorry about, things that didn't work out well for you, but do you really regret them? I don't know. I think it's a waste of time.
So speaking of Charlotte and marriage, you all have been together for a long time now,
Yeah.
especially in a culture and an age where there is a lot of divorce and pain and and all that. What do you attribute that to, your marriage lasting so long? And what advice would you give to somebody like James and Anna as newlyweds to live a successful marriage?
Well, you know, I don't know if, you know, a lot of people just equate staying together and not getting divorced as success. I don't know that that's necessarily success. You know, you can live a pretty miserable life and still be married, so I don't know that that's success. You know, I would say, this may sound flippant, but I do mean it. I would say lower your expectations. You know, we've been married 47 years now, closing in on half a century. And I think she has had to lower her expectations of me, and I have had to lower my expectations of her. You know, I think you have maybe an ideal, something more ideal in your mind, but I remember my mom saying, you know, usually you get along, and there are occasions when you really have to, in her words, when you really have to take it to the mat. And she said, but as we've gotten older, there are fewer and fewer occasions to take it to the mat. You just don't have to do that often, and she's realized that. And I think, you know, we've realized that too. You know, early on in your relationship, you know, in your marriage, you might be like, oh, well, I want this wall to be gray, and oh, no, I want this wall to be, you know, beige. And, it's like, oh, we got to worry about that. And it's like, who the hell cares what color the wall is? This is not worth an argument. This is not worth, we don't need to take this to the mat. You want a gray wall? Take your gray wall. That's fine. You want my opinion? Okay, my opinion is your gray is fine. And that's my opinion. And, we don't need, there are, I think over time, obviously, you're two individuals and you've got two different opinions about, a lot of things in life. And there are some things that are maybe worth taking it to the mat. But there are fewer things than you think, and there are, I think early on you're willing to take it to the mat whether or not you have mayonnaise on the sandwich. But later on, you can just lower your expectations and just say, whatever, put on anything you want. I'll eat it. I'm not going to die. It's going to be fine. And so maybe that's a disappointing thing to have to hear about marriage, and of course it's unique. I mean, it's my marriage, so it's, But I will say that I think my mom, said pretty much the same thing. It's just not that much reason to take it to the mat. I mean, unless it's some huge thing.
Yeah. Let's talk politics.
Okay.
Start with a broad brush. Just how has the country as a whole, especially on the political spectrum, changed over the course of your lifetime?
Well, I think it's changed a lot. I think it's changed a lot, and I think Mark Twain said, he said politicians are like diapers. They need to be changed regularly and for the same reason. And I think that's true, and I think politically the biggest single change that I've seen is, and I've seen this in a lot of areas. I've seen it in religion. I've seen it in a lot of areas. We used to have, for example, organizational religion. When I was a kid, that was all we had, was organizational religion. So we had, Presbyterians and Methodists and Baptists and, whatever. And we've migrated away from organizational religion into more personality-based religion. So you've got whether you want to call him an evangelist but like a Christian, for example, who would say, sort of an individual who represents the church. Scott and Sarah go to a church like that, and they call it nominally non-denominational, but it's people following an individual. Yes, it's nominally Christian, but it's not denominational. It's not, the structure of a religion. And people are following this individual, and if he left this whatever church and went somewhere else, they would follow him there. And I think you're seeing a lot of that in politics too, which is odd. People used to be like, oh, I'm a Republican, so I'm going to vote for the Republican candidate. And the Republican Party had a plank. They had a platform and different planks in the platform. This is what the Republican Party's doing. And the Democrat Party was the same kind of thing. And you voted for, have your decision on who was going to represent the party, and you would vote for that party. I think it's become a lot more contentious, and politics in general has become more contentious, and people are following this individual. It's almost like a personality cult instead of a political movement. You know, people are almost unaffiliated, and that's it's kind of an odd thing to see. And I think that in conjunction with people being kind of sort of virulent in their their feelings, and that they're not really as much, kind of an interesting thing that you're seeing today, not really as much intellectual about it as they are emotional about it. And they're making really strong, I mean, it's a different thing when you can be convinced about something that's intellectual. You can't be convinced about something that's emotional. It's something that just wells up within you. And, so it becomes a real, it's been the oddest thing, especially over the past decade or so. It's almost as though it's almost as though the focus is more negative than it is positive. It's not even as much as I support somebody or I support these thoughts as I oppose something, and I oppose those actions or those thoughts. And that's been an odd thing, and it's becomes almost a lifestyle, like veganism or something. It's like, oh, this is my thing, and I'm not ever gonna whatever, because this represents me. This is my internal belief system.
Yeah.
It has been pretty violent. I've never seen that before in American politics.
So who do you think's been the best president and worst president during your lifetime?
Well, during my lifetime would include Eisenhower and so forth. I don't really remember him as president. I would say Ronald Reagan was a great president. He really turned things around dramatically for the country, and that was a time when I was an adult, and I saw the effects. And then as an adult, probably his predecessor, Jimmy Carter. He was the worst I ever saw. I mean, that's the worst I ever saw. So.
What about social media? How do you feel like that figures into politics, and what do you think of social media as a whole, and what do you foresee life being like with kids nowadays being raised in that social media culture?
Well, personally, and this is something that we observed, interesting. Americans like to put it right out there. We're unique in the world. We really are. Americans put it right out there, and other cultures don't. Like for example, here's a good example: the bumper sticker. People putting I believe in Jesus, or Republicans rule, or what, and you see, it's like, why does the person driving behind you need to know what your religion is? What is the purpose of putting this out there? Why do you want somebody walking by in the parking lot to go, oh, he's a Muslim, or And they even do it down to these crazy, have you ever seen these things where they'll have these stick figures, the mom, the dad, 2 dogs, 1 baby. It's like, you need to know about my family, okay? You perfect stranger driving behind me in bumper to bumper traffic, I need to tell you about my family. We have this thing in America. Why do we do that? I mean, nobody else in the world does that. Those little stick figure things, I guarantee you they're not selling them anywhere else in the world but America. And Americans just love to wear shirts with stuff on it. I support the whales. I mean, whatever it is, they are all over it.